Welcome back, everyone. Mr. Talbot here for you again. We're going to finish up with the kind of the last area of the global tapestry to Unit 1 that we want to be checking out, and that is going to be developments in Europe. And so we're going to kind of do a lot of European history in a big time hurry, but we're really going to try and focus on what are referred to as the Middle Ages or sometimes kind of medieval times. And you'll see this is going to include stuff like feudalism and castles, the plague, Constantine, we'll talk about a little bit before, and who's coming before the Middle Ages, but kind of we're focused on the areas of Europe, and we're going to kind of see it's kind of divided into kind of Eastern Europe we'll talk about, and then we'll definitely kind of center on Western Europe, where the Roman Empire, the Western Roman Empire at least, was kind of at. And then in our second video, we're going to kind of look at the Renaissance and religion in particular. So European history is a lot of stuff sometimes as students in Western civilization, we have a lot of kind of background knowledge on. So this so you kind of get some context of where we're at in the story. So a lot of times we've studied ancient Greece with our friends like the philosophers from the Spa philosophers, Socrates, Plato, Aristotle. We got Socrates over here to the left about to take some hemlock. And so that's going on, in the time period BCE, Sparta, Athens, Peloponnesian War, all the gods on Mount Olympus. And so Greece ends up being taken over by the new power in the region, which is Rome. And that happens in 146 BCE. And so that's kind of what we see here going on is you've got kind of the Greeks, and he kind of here's where they were kind of in charge of. And then Rome, as you can kind of see the red, they're kind of coming on the scene, and they're going to have famous feuds with Hannibal and elephants and all that great stuff that would come in the classical period, stuff that we don't really dive into too much here in modern world AP history. But what we will see is, Rome, and we have a lot of that background. So we've got, Caesar, and it goes for and gladiators, and it starts with, those children of a wolf, Romulus and Remus. And you can kind of see on our map here, it's expanding out of the Italian peninsula. And then it becomes a pretty large empire, certainly by European standards. We'll see if we compare it to, some of the stuff we've seen in Dar al-Islam, and certainly what we'll eventually see with the Mongols, not nearly as large, and not really even as large as what the Inca had going for them. But still very impressive in how they run it. Now, eventually it goes from being a republic that had the Senate and those kind of things and some forms of democracy they had borrowed from the Greeks. And it's going to move into an empire, and you're going to have like Caesar Augustus, and Julius Caesar is going to get assassinated. And that's all happening again. The time period right before the BCE flips over to the CE. And then eventually, if you see on the map here, it's going to kind of split in half into the Eastern or Byzantine Empire and the Western Empire. So, and that's all taking place around then. So, we'll see that the Western Roman Empire, kind of what's going to kick off our time period is the kind of conquering by the Germanic tribes. And so those will be people like the Goths and the Franks and the Burgundians, all kind of will develop their own kingdoms in what used to be the Western Roman Empire. And that's kind of what we're going to say triggers or kicks off the Middle Ages. The Eastern Byzantine Empire, we're going to see stays around for longer, but other than kind of a short little expansion under Justinian, it's just kind of a slow deterioration, and eventually it's going to be conquered by the Turks. So we're going to kind of start the first time period of the Middle Ages we're looking at is the early Middle Ages. So this is about 500-ish or so is when the Roman Empire falls to about the next 500 years. And so one of the big things we want to look at is kind of the political system that they created. And that's going to be known as feudalism. So, these are knights and kings and those kind of things. It's a hierarchical system. So kind of like we see, with a caste system, only there's a little more social mobility. Not a ton, because a lot of it is still based on birth. But you'd have a king, and he's going to basically give land. And when he gives the land, what he's expecting in return from his lord is that he's going to be loyal. He's going to provide him with taxes. He's going to fight for him when need be. And then the lord is going to give land to kind of some lesser lords or knights, and then down to serfs or peasants. And those people are going to get food from their king, but they're also going to do a lot of the farming. So a lot of times people are like, you look at the serfs, and this is basically what used to be Roman slavery becomes serfdom, because there ain't a whole lot of moving out of being a serf. there ain't a whole big chance that you have a chance to get out of that. So people are always like, well, how did you end up setting that system? Why would people want to have that kind of a system? Like you get, okay, why would a king want it? But why would I mean, a lot of these lords are really rich, so why would they agree to a system like this? And certainly, why would the serfs agree to it? What we got to realize is that the Roman Empire was a very large and effective bureaucracy. It ran the show. It kept things in check. Okay, it was a pretty safe place to live by classical period standards. When that empire goes away, there's this huge power vacuum. You've got bandits and robber and murder and this huge spike in crime. People are looking for anything that can kind of provide that support for them. And of course, you've lost that centralized power. So now you're going to look for, it's not like the Roman Empire got conquered by, this other massive empire. They got conquered by some small German tribes and kingdoms. So it's going to stay decentralized because a lot of these people that invaded the Romans, they didn't really care about running the Roman Empire. That wasn't their goal. Their goal was just to stop the Romans from messing with them. So they kind of just leave, and there's just all this chaos. So you turn to kind of a decentralized power source, which would be like a local warlord who becomes kind of a lord, and then you have these kingdoms that get a little bit bigger. And we'll see over time in the Middle Ages that those kingdoms get a little bit bigger, a little bit bigger, a little bit bigger, until we see some of the kind of nation states we see today. Now, if we look at this, it kind of looks like the king is at the top. And he is in theory, but we're going to see in our second or third video here that religion was a huge part of it, and the Pope ran a lot of the show and could kind of influence a lot of what was going on. And again, the king is really reliant on the loyalty of his lords, and a lot of these lords have, they're the ones that have the soldiers, and a lot of the lords even have more money. So we're going to see, that's why there's going to be kind of a lot of internal struggle between different lords and who's supporting, who should be the next king, and all this kind of stuff. So the feudalism kind of springs out of a need to get back to stability, a need to get back to something structured. And that's why they like the predictability of, okay, whoever's in charge is going to be their kid that takes over, assuming it's a male and occasionally a female. So agriculture, that's kind of going on in the Middle Ages. Feudalism is all about land. So the economy becomes very centered around agriculture. So there's not a huge incentive to do like trade or any of that stuff. Because again, it's kind of dangerous to be doing a lot of this trade. So trade's kind of tamped down. Commercialization, urbanization that we see going on in China is not really taking place over here in Europe. So kind of each little manor or kind of lord's land was pretty self-sufficient. They pretty much made everything they need. And so especially if you were one of those lower classes, if you weren't going to do a military thing, you probably weren't going to be doing a whole lot of travel in general. Over time, some of this new technology trickles in from the Far East. Some of it Europeans just kind of figure out on their own. But we're going to see improvements in plow technology. We're going to see them do this thing called the 3-field system, which is where you had things like crop rotation. So some plants take nutrients out of the ground, other plants put nutrients back in. And then if you just don't grow anything on it for a year, the field will kind of be able to recover. So we kind of see this is kind of an example of a layout. So you'd have wheat, pulling some resources out, barley putting resources back in, and then your fallow animal grazing would kind of be, you wouldn't do anything on it other than let your animals eat the plants. And then the next year you would rotate. So this would become field 1 and they'd be doing wheat here. And then you'd be leaving barley alone, and you'd be putting barley where the wheat was. So that's kind of how that crop rotation would work. In our next video, we're going to kind of look at the middle, or better known as the High Middle Ages, and also then we're going to look at the not so great Late Middle Ages. But then we get to finish with the Renaissance. So hooray!